Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me for this segment, we have James Hill, CEO of MCF Energy. We're here to discuss meeting global energy demand and some of the opportunities and challenges associated with that. James, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks, and let's get right into this here. We know all about the technology that has come to market so quick over the past decade, and because of that, demand for powering all of this has exploded, right? And the big question is, how are we going to meet that demand?
Exactly. And the world is expanding, and third world countries are also coming online and having more demand for energy and power. And the MCF, which was formed about 2 years ago, is a pretty new company, but the management of MCF is very, very familiar with European and world resources and energy issues. And I just want to make it clear up front that MCF as a company strongly supports the transition to a carbon-free world. And we see ourselves as helping in that transition, as almost all of the energy companies that we're familiar with are on board with. So the energy needs of the world, of course, are substantial and will continue to grow. When you actually look at the various countries and the infrastructure required to make a transition from fossil fuels to a more carbon-based or renewable, non-carbon-based and renewable transition is going to be huge. It's going to be absolutely enormous. There's been estimates that you're going to have to spend $9.2 trillion per year to make this transition possible. And the idea is that are the governments of the world willing to contribute that amount of capital and resources to make the change? And of course, it really comes, how fast do you want the change? Do we approach it, very, very quickly and spend lots and lots of money and probably make a few mistakes? Or do we go at it a little bit more slowly and methodically and, more planned energy transition so that it doesn't crater industry, it doesn't destroy jobs, and it benefits society in general? I mean, that's really the goal.
Well, I mean, in a way, it would make sense for, taking it slow and being methodical about it. And this is a massive physical undertaking, right? And then, of course, we have public-private partnerships and, particularly in the US, permitting and regulation. And, I'm glad you made that point before that, senior leadership at MCF Energy, their experience, diversity of experience is important when it comes to these types of projects, because you need that type of experience to train for the skill sets and acquire the right skill sets to execute on that. Before we get into those challenges and opportunities, James, I want to ask you, though, what's unique about the European markets relative to the US?
European markets basically have been basically dependent on imports from Russia for the last number of decades. And I like to refer it as being drunk on Russian gas. Because of that, their domestic production since 1998 has decreased over 75% since, from 1998 to today. That means that they have to import 75% more of the energy that they're using. So, the idea is they rely more and more on their energy security, on bad actors, so to speak. And let's face it, there's no more secure energy resources that a country can have than those within your own borders. And this is what MCF Energy has tried to do. I first started to explore Europe around 2008. And, since the invasion of Ukraine, Europe has finally recognized that energy security is paramount to the European communities. The real transition is going to be supported by natural gas. Wind and solar is going to require major infrastructure changes, major build outs in new transmission lines. It takes almost 10 years to permit a new transition line, a new transmission line. I mean, that's ridiculous when you're trying to keep lights on and industries going and petrochemical industries going.
Mhm.
So go ahead.
Let's talk about the challenges and opportunities here, because you're talking about multiple sources of energy. And James, this is something that I struggle with, and it's probably, related to me starting to cover some of these, areas in the markets. But does it have to be one specific energy, or is it going to take a portfolio of energies to execute on this? I just don't see going 100% to renewable energy resources. Not even the undertaking of that, but what about backups? What if, are we still going to have generators with natural gas, or is that just going to be phased out? I mean, will it be a portfolio of energy resources?
Well, for instance, Germany, since Germany shut down their nuclear plants, they now have 51 coal-fired power plants operating in Germany. They did exactly the opposite of what they wanted to do. The energy mix, and it is an energy mix because you're going to have not just nuclear, which it's buying from France right now, but you're going to have your coal-fired power plants. You're going to have your solar arrays and of course, your wind farms and your renewable energy supplies of, biofuels and that sort of thing. But of course, wind and solar is variable. You're going to have something to keep the lights on. When people don't realize that when they flip that light switch on the wall, that it isn't magic. It stays on for a reason, and it stays on constantly. A consistent power flow is something that the industry has to provide. And I'm talking about the energy industry here.
Mhm.
So, as we build up the grids, with wind and solar, natural gas is the transition fuel. I mean, the EU has recognized this and declared natural gas green and even renewable, which of course is what we're trying to do in Germany and Austria, is to contribute to that supply, which will be available.
Yeah, it's funny what you say about the magic switch of electricity going on. My father, throughout his career, was an electrical ops manager for an oil company, so it's very near and dear to us that it just doesn't, go on. But it's a great point that you bring up about the light switch. So again, bringing it back to more of a rudimentary level, I have a whole house generator. When the power goes out, as it does all the time where I live, because it's natural gas powered for the generator, everything goes back on. So I can't see having one or the other, or mandating some of these. I think it's a bit short-sighted to put some of these mandates out there without the recognition of scale, affordability, and having some sort of a backup.
No, that's very true. And I too have a backup generator. Mine's powered by propane, but that's neither here nor there. The idea is that not all people can afford a backup. Not all people are going to be able to be in an area where they can have an alternate source of energy. They're still going to rely on the power companies to provide them with a good, clean, consistent flow of power. Storage of food, transportation of food. I mean, there are so many aspects that the energy industry supports. Petrochemicals, 10% of hydrocarbons go towards the manufacture of plastics. What would the world be without plastics? There's a lot of aspects to this that need to be addressed. And, basically, as we at MCF see natural gas as that bridging fuel, which will allow us to maintain a level of consistent life and, energy for jobs and heating, to move forward into a more carbon-free environment. It's going to take decades to do this. And
Are
natural gas will be the fuel.
right. Are regulators and policymakers, are they coming to terms with this? Or is the industry working with them to, I think, like, was it California 2030 mandates for EVs? I mean, the infrastructure is not even in place. So have these working groups found some success over there?
Well, in Europe, yes, there's a new energy initiative in Germany where they actually talk about developing domestic resources. They're suddenly realizing, as I pointed out, that energy security is something that's extremely important. There's an awful lot of industries in Germany that are looking at moving out of Germany because of the inability of the local power grids to provide them with good, consistent power. So, it's very, very important to, not just industries, but the people who are employed there. If the industry moves out, the people aren't going to move, they're going to be out of work. So, this is very, very important and critical to all governments to provide this level of power security to their population.
Yeah, especially when you put it in terms of power security, that certainly does resonate. James, appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, Jill. Thank you very much.